how has your vision for your career changed over time? Have you always just been kind of like, I'm going from one job to the next, or do you have like maybe like an objective, like, oh, I want to be an editor, I want to be a director, and how has that changed? What does that internal world for you look like?
So internally, I've always been like, I want to just work in film. And that ultimately has slowly evolved where I had to quickly figure out what I was doing with my life because college wasn't going to work out. So I often found myself on sets by accident. I was just like, oh, I guess I'm doing this now. And it was so much fun. And then I had a moment where I was just like, oh, that's over. How do I get the next one? And I was just like, oh, I don't know what the deuce is. Who cares? And then I just worked on. I worked in high. I worked. I was like a middle school teacher for a little bit, and like I thought that was where my life was going. And I was just like, oh, um, I guess I teach middle schoolers filmmaking for a little bit, and I guess that's the way the ocean flows now. And then I got an opportunity to work on a different movie or show, and I was like, oh, this is hard. Maybe I take a step back and I get back into film, and and maybe that's my trajectory because I want to be an editor now. How do I do that?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
How did that come upon you?
I think very much my vision of being an editor came from my first internship at Maisels,
Right.
where
That's
I
what you're
had this
mentioning.
lovely
They mentioned
editing.
the puzzle pieces.
Yeah,
You like that?
I had this lovely editing supervisor who was just like, this is like post is great. This is what post is like. It's like being in a dark closet. I'm like, what is happening? And it, no. He's just like he was just emphasizing that post often does not get the recognition it needs and the support that it needs. And he's like, but still, we get the job done, and that's what's important. And we make gears turn. That's what he was telling me.
Yeah.
Um, and he at the end of the day, that made me really go, oh, I really want to be a storyteller. And I'm like, but what aspect do I want to do? And I remember cutting this Q&A video where this lovely woman I had the chance to like speak to on multiple occasions. She ran like the educational part of Maisel. She got on stage and she was like, at the end of the day, we teach our students like we're not made of atoms, we're made of stories. Everyone has the capacity to tell a story. Everyone has a story,
Mm,
and that's what's important. And that like
yeah.
really made it click for me as I'm cutting this thing that like, oh no, that's so true. Everyone does have this story
Yeah.
in them. It's important for everyone to get the chance to tell that.
Yeah.
And while cutting it, I was just like, this is really like this is like piecing together this giant puzzle, and like I love doing this. Where I
Yeah.
was like, oh, this is like playing with Legos and like building like a Death Star or something.
Yeah.
And it really pieced it together to me for me. And before that, I was just like, I want to work in film, but I don't know what, and I'm not necessarily good at most of the other things. And I was just like, I don't know. And my first cut of my documentary, I went to everyone and said, everyone, I cut it down to a minute. And then someone told me, Javon, this is an hour long. And I was like, oh fuck. And and I was like, oh, that's funny. And I just kept thinking about that for years on, and it really drove me in the direction of post. So working through like production, I was just like, I need to understand how everything works if I do want to be an editor. I want to know what might happen on set, what might they ignore, and what might they go, oh, we can just do this in post.
Yeah.
Because that will ultimately help my grand vision. And that whole thing has evolved into me going, oh, I I'm a PA, but I don't want to keep PAing. So then it evolved into me being a post-production coordinator and going, oh, I'm a post-production coordinator. What's my next step? And I'm still figuring that out. I've had the chance to be an assistant editor before. I love that. It's just not necessarily, um,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily something I'm very confident in, hence me being a post-production coordinator and not like an assistant editor and editor, because I limit myself. I put restrictions on myself where I'm like, I'm not where I'm at with my craft enough for me to go, I'm going to cut this, despite me having the opportunity to do
Hmm.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So being kind of an open book, that's really interesting that you said I just want to be in film in general. I
Mm.
think, I fell into a little bit of this trap, and a lot of people who go through film school kind of fall into the trap when they like specialize or they want to like be the next
Yeah.
Spielberg or something. where they have like a preconceived notion of what they want to be before they even get into the professional world. But that's really cool that you just like kept yourself open and you let your kind of like soul kind of like latch on to what you thought was attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Because there's definitely a dissonance between what we going into industry, what we want to do, and then like once we start doing the dirty work, like we're not all going to be the next Spielberg or
Yeah.
Tarantino or whatnot. So, and most of us will end up doing kind of below the line work. So, trying to kind of like keep your mind open to like within that world of the below the line work, like what is interesting or attractive.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
no, for sure. And I thankfully, since I've had I have a diverse resume, so I've had the option to see how a post job works and see how a production job works. And I'm like, a post production job more aligns with my style of work and my style of being a creative. Why? Okay, my hands up, so it's just doing that. Um, yeah, and just my style of work really just aligns with post production, and
yeah.
it just helps me gravitate towards that.